Hi everyone, my name is Alex Rawlings and welcome to October's edition of Just Ask Alex, where every month I answer your questions about language learning. Today we're going to be talking about how to learn a new alphabet, and I'm also going to try and answer the question of whether you can ever truly learn a language by yourself. I think learning a new alphabet can be quite intimidating for new students, especially if you've never done it before. The idea of looking at these strange symbols and thinking that that's a writing system can be a bit strange. However, new alphabets are often nothing to really be afraid of, and you can expect to learn to read and write in one in about a week to a month, depending on how hard they are. Of course, I'm not talking here about complicated writing systems like Chinese characters, which are very different. Of course, they are learnable as well, and there are plenty of materials out there that will help you to learn them, but it's not quite the same as learning something like Russian, Arabic, Greek, or Georgian, which have writing systems that correspond to the Latin one that we use in English. So the first thing that I'd advise is looking into courses that will actually teach you to read the alphabet. There are a lot out there in book form, and of course you can check out Transparent's brand new online interactive course which will teach you the new alphabet via online games. There's more information about that available on their website. Also, for learning the Arabic script in particular, I can recommend the Teach Yourself Beginner's Arabic Script book. That's what I used when I learned to read Arabic a couple of years ago, and I found it was really useful to have everything put into quite a logical and clear format, chapter by chapter. When choosing which course to use when learning your new language, it's definitely a good idea to find one that at least starts with a Latin transcription, but then drops it so that you don't become too reliant on it. For example, this book which I used for Hebrew, Colloquial Hebrew by Routledge, starts off like this, with the Hebrew and of course a very clear Latin transcription, but then by Unit 10 this is completely gone and you're thrown into the deep end slightly more. But if all those techniques aren't really being that successful for you, there's a couple of things you can try to do to supplement this. Pick up some basic children's stories, maybe buy them off eBay, find them on the internet. These quite simple stories with very clear letters and big writing are really useful at the beginning stages of learning to read and write in a new language. You might want to try practicing reading loan words in a new language, words like jazz, cafe, things that you would recognise just to see how the letters in your new alphabet work. And of course names are the same, see if you can read a list of names and spot them, and just generally get familiar with these new letters. In a lot of ways, of course, actually having a new alphabet can be an advantage, especially with pronunciation. One of the problems about learning languages that use Latin is that you can often fall into the trap of thinking that a letter in one language is pronounced the same in all of them. For example, the letter G. Now, in English, the letter G is pronounced either like a G sound, like in gate and gain, or like a J, like in generate or age. However, even though the same letter appears in Spanish, the sound that's used is actually very different. In Spanish, the letter G is pronounced R or J. For example, ganar and generar. But of course it's still spelled with a G, so a lot of English speakers fall into the trap of mispronouncing this either as a G in ganar or J in generar. People that are learning Greek, however, will be familiar with the letter gamma. The letter gamma is never pronounced like an English G, and because when you're learning the alphabet you learn gamma is pronounced R or Y, you will never get it confused. When languages have their own alphabets, I find that they often have much more logical spelling systems because the alphabet is designed for the sounds that the language actually makes. Spelling in Russian and in Greek is actually a lot easier than spelling in English or French. So overall, yes, learning an alphabet isn't necessarily easy, but it is doable as long as you set yourself realistic expectations, get yourself the right materials. Before long, you'll really appreciate the fact that it's there. Because we all learn differently as language learners, I think the answer is not to try and pick one or two methods and really concentrate on them, but to think about the huge range of methods that you can incorporate into your language learning. So when it comes to this question of whether you can completely learn a language by yourself, I think the answer is that basically learning by yourself and learning with a teacher both have very important and very different roles to play. Learning almost definitely has to happen by yourself. A teacher can't simply insert a list of vocabulary into your head. That's the kind of thing that you learn when you're by yourself, that you take several hours over, that you really have to understand yourself before you can learn to do that efficiently. But teachers are very good as well because they can explain grammar points in a much more interactive, real and human manner than perhaps a short description in a grammar book, which might be a bit confusing. They can help you out with your pronunciation, they can structure and guide the way that you learn language so that you're learning material in an efficient order. And of course teachers provide encouragement and support that, there are times that we all need on our language learning journey. Languages are innately a social phenomenon. We learn them in order to communicate with other people, to reach out to people that we might not have been able to speak to otherwise. And so I'm skeptical really about whether you can really say that you speak a language if you've just been locked up in a room with books for a couple of months. I find that there's often a big gap between someone's theoretical knowledge of a language and someone's practical knowledge of a language. Improving your practical knowledge of the language can only really be done with other people. Language exchanges, native speaker friends, fellow language learners, these are all great ways for you to make your learning process much more interactive, to involve other people, and to have practice actually using and speaking the language in a natural way. What's actually always inspired me to learn languages has been the people that I've met. It's been the idea that I could speak their native language, communicate with them in a way that English perhaps doesn't allow us to. So can you learn a language completely by yourself? I think the answer is probably not. But as I say, we all learn differently, we all have different methods, so it really does depend on the individual. I don't think there's any harm in involving other people in your learning. That could really help out. So thank you for watching again and sending in your questions, and I look forward to reading more next month. If you need to contact me, you can do this via my Facebook page, my blog, rawlings.com, or on Twitter. And remember, if you have a question about language learning, just ask Alex. Good luck with your language learning. See you next time.